more thoroughly to the question.
Which question is that?
From Mr. Owens. I will make sure that question is clarified. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Moran, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Secretary Becerra, I want to talk to you about something that I think is very bipartisan. So let's take a deep breath. I know a lot of stuff that we talk about here today is partisan in nature, and frankly, a lot of it we disagree with. But I think there is something we can agree on, and that is we can agree on the protection of children from child abuse, and we can agree that we should not just prevent it, but we should protect those that are in those situations and get them out as soon as possible. Would you agree with that?
I would.
Yeah. Mr. Secretary, the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, also known as CAPTA, authorizes grants to states to assist communities to prevent child abuse and neglect. Your department is tasked with overseeing the implementation of CAPTA, as you're aware. I believe that, as I mentioned, everybody here should be on the same page with trying to prevent sexual abuse and the exploitation of children. It's awful and it should be stopped. I'm sure you agree with that, as you said, correct?
As I say, no child should be abused.
That's right. I'm sure you're also aware that a high percent of abusers are actually connected either by family or close friendships to those that they abuse. Are you aware of that as well?
I think you're accurate.
Yeah. The numbers that we see across the board is about 90% of those that are being abused by those that are closest to them, and that's just so despicable. In Texas, the average child spends about 7 hours a day in their school system. That means that most students are spending a good portion of their day, sometimes more with teachers and with staff and school personnel than they are with their family members at home. And that provides an opportunity for them to cry out when necessary. And that also provides an opportunity for those teachers and staff to recognize those students that are being abused throughout the day and then to help step in that moment. Would you also agree with that?
You said a lot. For the most part, I do believe that we have to make sure that we're providing ways for children to communicate that they're being abused or to be able to spot the abuse.
Yeah. In fact, school personnel are critical in helping to identify child abuse cases. I think they account for about 52% of all identified child abuse cases that are actually reported. With that in mind, I strongly believe that lots of child sexual abuse can be prevented or stopped through our educational institutions with enhanced prevention policies and enhanced opportunities for guidance in that area. Do you believe it's important for teachers, school employees, and other caregivers who work with children to be educated about the signs of children being sexually abused?
I know in some areas of the country they do receive some training, but certainly I think the more that our teachers and those who have who are surrounded by children most of the time should have some training.
Yeah, I agree. Do you think additional resources for teachers, school employees, and other caregivers would be helpful in these efforts for them to be able to identify and report so that we can combat sexual abuse?
I think most teachers would say that that would be a good thing to provide the resources for them to be trained and have the resources to implement.
I completely agree with you. In fact, Representative Wild, who's a Democrat from Pennsylvania, and I are working on this exact issue. I've reintroduced what's called the Jenna Quinn Law of 2024, named after Jenna Quinn, a sexual abuse survivor from Texas. This bill would allow HHS to use existing federal funds to be used for eligible entities for increasing evidence-based or information training on sexual abuse prevention. It does exactly what you and I just agreed needs to actually happen is we need to open up additional resources, no additional cost to taxpayers, but more resources here where schools and institutions can tap into these existing resources and get education and training for their teachers so they can report these sexual abuses. Data has shown that after this law passed in Texas, and it's passed in a lot of states, educators reported abuse at almost 4 times the rate than before. Sounds like good progress in my state. Nearly every committee member on this committee in their own home state has enacted a version of this law, that their states have enacted that version. I think it's time that we have a national strategy to stop child sexual abuse, and I think the Jenna Quinn Law of 2024 would be a good way to do it. Hope you'll take a look at it. With that, I'm going to reserve and yield the remainder of my time to the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Owen.
Okay, thank you so much. I just wanted to tie down that last question I had for you.